You ever get that feeling, man, like something just ain't right? Like the official story, the one they're feeding us, is just off? You start digging, pulling on threads, and next thing you know, you're down the rabbit hole. That's what we're talking about today, folks. Conspiracy theories. But not just any theories, these are the ones that turned out to be true. We're talking about government cover-ups, secret programs, stuff they swore up and down wasn't happening. We're gonna break down the top 10, lay it all out there, and let you decide for yourself. Buckle up because some of this stuff is straight out of a sci-fi movie, except it's real. Kicking off our list at number 10 is Operation Paperclip. Picture this. World War II just ended, right? The Allies win, the Nazis are toast. But here's the thing, man, the US government, they saw an opportunity. They knew the Nazis had some seriously brilliant minds, especially in rocketry and science. So what do? They scoop up over 1,600 Nazi scientists, engineers, the whole shebang, and bring them to America. This was no small operation, man. They kept it under wraps for decades. People thought it was just crazy talk, a conspiracy theory. But guess what? Turns out it was totally true. These Nazi scientists, they ended up playing a huge role in the Cold War. All right, coming in at number 9, we got the Gulf of Tonkin incident. This one's a doozy, man. It's 1964, the Vietnam War is heating up, and America's getting sucked deeper and deeper into the jungle. Then bam, the US government drops a bombshell. They claim that North Vietnamese torpedo boats attacked American destroyers in the Gulf of Tonkin, not once but twice. This was it, man, the justification they needed to escalate the war. The American public, they're outraged, they're scared. Congress gives Lyndon Johnson, LBJ, a blank check to wage war in Vietnam. But here's the kicker, man. Years later, declassified documents start to paint a very different picture. Turns out the whole thing was murky, man. The first attack, it was probably a mistake, some jumpy sailors seeing shadows in the fog. And the second attack, well, that one might not have even happened at all. The government, they knew they needed a reason to ramp up the war, to sell it to the American people, so they used this incident, whether it was real or not, to justify their actions. This, my friends, is a classic example of a government cover-up. They lied to the public, to Congress, to everyone. And for what? To get us involved in a war that, in hindsight, a lot of people believe we shouldn't have been involved in. All right, folks, buckle up, because number 8 on our list is some seriously wild stuff. We're talking about MKUltra, the CIA's foray into the world of mind control. I mean, this is the stuff of science fiction, right? Back in the Cold War, these guys were obsessed with getting an edge over the Soviets, and they were willing to go to some crazy lengths. We're talking about slipping people drugs, messing with their heads through hypnosis, even torturing them, all in the name of science. For years, anyone who even whispered about this stuff was labeled a conspiracy theorist, one of those tinfoil hat-wearing lunatics. But then boom! The 1970s rolled around and the government was forced to come clean. Documents started leaking out, revealing this insane program that had been hidden from the public. Turns out, the truth was way stranger than fiction. We're talking about real people, man, being experimented on without their knowledge or consent. It's a dark, dark chapter in American history, and it raises some really uncomfortable questions about the government's power and the ethics of scientific research. I mean, where do you draw the line? It's enough to make you wonder what else they could be hiding from us. This wasn't just some rogue operation either. This was the CIA, the big league, sanctioned from the top. It makes you question everything you thought you knew, man. What else is going on behind closed doors that we don't know about? It's a scary thought, but it's important to be aware of this stuff, to learn from our mistakes and make sure nothing like this ever happens again. All right, coming in at number 7, we've got the Watergate Scandal. Now this one's a classic, a real doozy. It all started back in 1972 when some burglars were caught red-handed breaking into the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate Hotel. Sounds like something out of a spy movie, right? At first, it seemed like a pretty straightforward case of political espionage. But as the investigation unfolded, things started to get really weird. It turned out that these weren't just any burglars, they were connected to President Richard Nixon's re-election campaign. Talk about a smoking gun. Nixon and his cronies tried to downplay the whole thing, calling it a third-rate burglary. But the media smelled blood in the water and kept digging. It turned out this break-in was just the tip of the iceberg. There was a whole web of lies, cover-ups, and dirty tricks orchestrated by the Nixon administration. Nixon almost got away with it, but the truth has a way of coming out, doesn't it? Tapes of Nixon's conversations in the Oval Office were released, proving his involvement in the cover-up. Facing impeachment, Nixon resigned in disgrace, the first and only U.S. president to do so. The Watergate scandal eroded public trust in the government and showed that even the most powerful people are not above the law. It's a story about the abuse of power, the importance of a free press, and the enduring power of truth. We have to fight for our democracy, protect it, and hold our leaders accountable. Alright folks, this next one is truly horrifying. We're talking about the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, a stain on American medicine. For 40 years, the U.S. Public Health Service conducted this unethical study on 600 African American men. These men were told they were receiving free health care for bad blood, but they were infected with syphilis, and the government withheld treatment. They wanted to study the disease's progression, leading to blindness, heart failure, and death. These men were treated like lab rats. They targeted black men in rural Alabama, exploiting their poverty. It's a textbook example of racism and medical exploitation. These men were lied to and denied life-saving treatment. It's a chilling reminder of the dangers of unchecked authority. Now you might be thinking, there's no way this could happen today, we've learned from our mistakes. But the Tuskegee experiment serves as a stark reminder that we can never let our guard down. The doctors involved justified their actions, claiming these men wouldn't have sought treatment anyway, but that's just a load of crap. They dehumanized these individuals, viewing them as subjects rather than patients. When the experiment was exposed in 1972, the public was outraged. It led to congressional hearings, lawsuits, and a formal apology from President Bill Clinton in 1997. But the damage was done. The Tuskegee syphilis experiment left a legacy of mistrust and fear in the black community. It's a story that needs to be told and retold, so we can learn from the past and ensure that such atrocities never happen again. Alright folks, buckle up because this next one is a wild ride. We're talking about the Iran-Contra Affair, and it's got everything: secret arms deals, hostages, covert operations, you name it. So, picture this. It's the 1980s, the Cold War is raging, and the Reagan administration is facing a serious dilemma. They want to support the Contra rebels in Nicaragua, but Congress has passed a law forbidding it. Now this is where things get shady. Instead of respecting the law, the administration cooks up this crazy scheme. They decide to secretly sell arms to Iran, who's also under an arms embargo, and then use the money to fund the Contras. It's like something out of a spy movie, man. Of course, this whole thing blows up in their faces when it's leaked to the press. Suddenly, the Reagan administration is caught red-handed, and the American public is outraged. Congressional hearings are launched, investigations are opened, and the whole country wants answers. It's a total mess. And the more they dig, the deeper the rabbit hole goes. It turns out this whole operation was run by a bunch of high-level officials, including members of the National Security Council. They were operating outside the law, bypassing Congress, and basically doing whatever the hell they wanted. The Iran-Contra Affair was a major scandal, man. It showed that even at the highest levels of government, there are people willing to bend the rules, break the law, and deceive the public, all in the name of national security. It makes you wonder what else is going on behind closed doors that we don't know about, and how much of what we're told is actually true. It's enough to make you question everything, man. This next one is straight out of a dystopian novel, folks. We're talking about COINTELPRO, a covert FBI program that ran from the 1950s to the 1970s. Imagine a government agency so paranoid about dissent that it resorts to illegal surveillance, infiltration, and sabotage to disrupt and discredit domestic political organizations. That's COINTELPRO in a nutshell. Now, the FBI wasn't just going after any groups. They were specifically targeting civil rights activists, anti-war protesters, socialist and communist organizations, and even environmental groups. Think about that for a second. The very people who were fighting for peace, equality, and justice were being targeted by their own government. It's insane. They used all sorts of dirty tricks, spreading false rumors, forging documents, blackmailing people, even instigating violence. For years, the FBI managed to keep COINTELPRO under wraps. They denied its existence, destroyed evidence, and intimidated anyone who dared to speak out. But in 1971, a group of activists broke into an FBI office in Pennsylvania and uncovered a trove of documents that exposed the program to the world. The public was outraged, man. They couldn't believe that their own government was engaging in such shady tactics. Congressional hearings were held, investigations were launched, and the FBI was forced to admit to its wrongdoing. COINTELPRO was officially shut down, but the damage was done. It eroded public trust in the government and left a lasting stain on the FBI's reputation. It's a dark chapter in American history, and a reminder that power corrupts, man. Alright folks, let's talk about Operation Mockingbird. This one's a doozy, and it cuts right to the heart of how we consume information. We're talking about the CIA secretly using journalists and media outlets to spread propaganda and influence public opinion. It sounds crazy, right? Like something out of a conspiracy theorist's fever dream. But hold on to your hats because it's all true. During the Cold War, the CIA was obsessed with winning hearts and minds, both at home and abroad. They saw the media as a powerful weapon in this fight, a way to shape narratives, control the message, and discredit their enemies. So, they started recruiting journalists, editors, and even media executives to work for them, either knowingly or unknowingly. Now, we're not just talking about a few rogue journalists here. We're talking about some of the biggest names in the business, working for major newspapers, magazines, and television networks. These guys were planting stories, spreading disinformation, and manipulating public opinion on a massive scale. And the crazy part is, most people had no idea they were being played. The CIA even went so far as to set up their own fake news agencies and fund student organizations to pump out their propaganda. They called it psychological warfare, but it was really just a fancy way of saying brainwashing. Operation Mockingbird was eventually exposed in the 1970s, but its legacy lives on. It makes you question everything you read and see in the media, man. Who's really pulling the strings? And what agenda are they pushing? Alright, coming in at number 2, we got the Manhattan Project. Now, this one's a real doozy, man. We're talking about the creation of the atomic bomb, a weapon so powerful it could level entire cities in the blink of an eye. I mean, think about that for a second. This is some serious heavy stuff. During World War II, the US government rounded up the best and brightest minds they could find, physicists, engineers, you name it, and stuck them in these secret cities all over the country. They called them places like Oak Ridge and Los Alamos. They were working day and night under the strictest secrecy to unlock the secrets of the atom. Can you imagine the pressure these guys were under? The fate of the world literally rested on their shoulders. And the craziest part is nobody outside of these secret cities had any idea what was going on. It was like something straight out of a science fiction movie. This thing was so top secret that even Vice President Harry Truman was kept in the dark. It wasn't until he became president after FDR died that he was finally briefed on the project. That's how clandestine this whole operation was. Now, the Manhattan Project was ultimately successful and they developed the atomic bomb, changing the course of history forever. But it came at a cost, man. The sheer destructive power of these weapons, it's terrifying. The bombs they dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, those were just the beginning. We're talking about a whole new era of warfare, the nuclear age. It's a sobering thought, man. The potential for destruction on a scale never seen before. And the thing is, once you unleash a technology like that, you can't just put it back in the bottle. It's out there, forever. It's a constant reminder of the power we possess and the responsibility that comes with it. The Manhattan Project, it's a story of incredible scientific achievement, but also one of profound ethical dilemmas. It makes you think, where do we draw the line? What are the consequences of our actions? It's some deep stuff, man. Alright, we've reached the number 1 spot, and this one's a real humdinger. We're talking about the NSA's surveillance program. This is the kind of stuff that used to be considered tinfoil hat territory, crazy conspiracy theories. Turns out it was all true. For years, people whispered about the government spying on its own citizens. I mean, it makes sense, right? They've got the technology, so why wouldn't they? But it was all speculation, rumors, until this guy Edward Snowden came along. Snowden was a contractor for the NSA, and he saw firsthand the extent of the surveillance they were conducting. And let me tell you, it was massive. We're talking about collecting data on millions, maybe even billions of people around the world. Phone calls, emails, text messages, internet browsing history, you name it, they were scooping it all up. This dude was like, this is messed up, man. The public needs to know about this. So he did what he thought was right. He leaked classified documents to the press, blowing the lid off this whole thing wide open. The Snowden revelations, man, they sent shockwaves around the world. People were outraged, and rightfully so. I mean, think about it. The government, this massive entity, snooping on your every move, collecting your data, who knows what they're doing with it. It's a major invasion of privacy. Of course, the government, they tried to downplay the whole thing. Oh, it's just for national security, they said. We're just trying to keep you safe from terrorists. but a lot of people weren't buying it. This whole thing sparked a huge debate about privacy in the digital age. I mean, where do we draw the line? What's the balance between security and freedom? It's a tough question, man. And the thing is, this isn't just some abstract concept, you know? This affects all of us. Every time you use your phone, every time you go online, you're leaving a digital trail. And the government, they've got the ability to track your every move. It's kind of creepy when you think about it. Well, there you have it, folks. 10 conspiracy theories that turned out to be true. From government cover-ups to secret experiments, we've covered some wild stuff today. It just goes to show you, sometimes the truth really is stranger than fiction. And you know what? There are plenty more conspiracies out there just waiting to be uncovered. So keep digging, keep asking questions, and don't be afraid to challenge the official narrative. You never know what you might find. As we've seen, sometimes the truth really is stranger than fiction. These are just a few examples of conspiracy theories that turned out to be true. Which one surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below.